in a movie where two sides of a group that we like are fighting each other, it's a bit hard to have a villain come in and both not overpower the story, but also not seem so insignificant. And thus we get Baron Zemo. So what did you think about his inclusion in the story? Did it work for you? He was a lot smaller scale villain, more personal villain than any characters we've really had so far.
I thought that was a very wise decision, right? Is that while he is the one pulling the strings, that he is not, I'm going to conquer the world. He is by design, a innocuous presence, And ultimately, the reveal at the end is that it's like he's not trying to rebuild Hydra. He's not trying to,
Take over the world.
There's no doomsday device.
Right.
He just wants to destroy the Avengers, and the fact that he succeeds is what I think is really cool about it. I mean, I agree with, I love the Marvel movies. I also agree with a lot of people that the villains is probably one of their most notable weak spots, with a couple of exceptions. I actually think Zemo is, one of their better ones as far as motivation and, kind of when you get that reveal about him. I'm actually really curious to rewatch this movie, which I'm doing tonight.
And tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after.
But I am curious to kind of sort of chart Zemo more, knowing what we know about him at the end, and the reveal that the phone call from his wife, that it was a recording because she's dead.
Were those surprises to you? I thought him pretending to be the Winter Soldier and the fact his wife were dead were sort of.
I didn't think about the wife thing because I thought I guess because I was taking it from a different approach, in that I thought it was it's also an interesting approach if this guy who's destroying the Avengers has a wife
family.
And kids at home,
Gotcha.
because that would be interesting too. But my only big criticism about Zemo, and it's one that I also, again, want to analyze watching the movie, is it is a huge stretch that, from what we know, I'm trying to remember if we learned anything about what his career was, but some dude from Sokovia in 1 year got all this info and pulled off what he pulled off is kind of the biggest stretch to me. But as far as his motivation and his role in the movie, I like that a lot.
I mean, I didn't think it was that much of a stretch if that's literally all he's doing, and you get the sense he was a bit of a nefarious dude anyway. I agree with you that his motivations are better and not sort of as, two-dimensional as, say, Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy or someone like that. But that said, I still think that Zemo is a pretty forgettable villain at the end of the day. Maybe it's simply because the movie isn't about him.
Yeah.
He's just sort of a guiding force in their story. But I think they did the best they could with him, maybe, but he's still not anyone who I'm going to remember as we're looking forward and I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, Loki or something like that.
I guess I do think he did exactly what he's supposed to, though. He is a symbol at the end. He's as much of a symbol as, the mother that Tony talks to.
Right.
It's it just turns out that he has decided, that it broke him to the point that he has now targeted the Avengers. So I that's why I kind of like that approach with him at the end. And I love that scene with him and Black Panther, actually, because it is when he's just sorry about your father. I think that's actually, and you kind of believe it, even though he is totally responsible for that, that it's he's a man who's kind of broken inside. So I'm not saying oh my God, greatest character ever. I can't wait to see him return. But I think as far as what this movie's about, he was very well done.
I mean, I can appreciate all of that, but he was the worst. I'm sorry.
As
he
a
was
character
the worst.
or as
just
someone
everything.
with
He was super paper thin. Like you said, only had a year to do all this by himself. You think there'd be a lot of people who are equally disgruntled with the Avengers? A team would have made more sense. They could do all these things. But one man by himself, based off of highly coincidental things, that the Winter Soldier even has code words like that, and that Tony Stark's parents were killed by the Winter Soldier, and it happens to fall into place.
That was very neat.
Highly coincidental things happening, one thing after the other. He was barely in the movie. He was just the thinnest frame, skeletal, structure made of brittle pasta. That was sort of the structure of why these heroes were fighting. I thought it would be better if they were just actually fighting, like in the comic book, where it's just a battle of ideals. Something horrible happens in the beginning. There's no mastermind plotting it all. I hate that when this was all my highly coincidental plan. I don't like that, and I feel like this movie kind of suffered for that because it didn't. In the end, the last third, I guess, it became this hunt for Zemo, and then there was obviously the reveal of the Winter Soldier killed Tony Stark's parents in that fight, but it didn't. I feel like I lost sight of the Civil War, of the registration argument. Like, I don't really know where that ends. And because they're so busy tying up these other plot lines in the end, we don't even kind of see the outcome. Like, what is the result? Like, what is the world like? Even in the comic book, there were a couple panels. I'm sorry I keep saying the comic book, but, you know.
It's the source-ish material.
Is it the denouement, I believe you say, of it, sort of looking towards the future of what the world is like, even though you don't exactly see it yet. And, like, we even got Iron Man, doing a press conference with a bunch of registered heroes,
right.
And so, but we didn't get that this time. We didn't really
no finite
feel,
end.
yeah, we don't feel an end to that argument. We didn't feel like anyone won the argument, nor do we see the result of him having won the argument.
Well, before we get too far into that, I want to know, obviously, Baron Zemo left us a little bit divided. We want to know what you guys think. Let us know. Our own civil war. So let us know in the comments.